This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider. It might feel like we've all been in a kind of stasis bubble where nothing's been changing, but in reality, of course, life at the start of lockdown was much simpler than it is now. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives. It was an easy message to get across. Now, though, the country's been testing the limits of self-isolation regulations, with people reportedly flocking to parks over the bank holiday. Some businesses are running out of money and patients waiting to reopen, and infection rates are falling, but not enough to set everyone free. It's a lot more complicated out there, and there's still a goal to lift the lockdown. So the government has changed its messaging. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives. And they've been hit by a backlash from people saying it's too confusing, muddled. Our editorial column has sympathies for both sides.
The Prime Minister gave a different sort of speech last night because the situation in this country is still precarious.
We must stay alert. We must continue to control the virus and save lives.
But ask a simple question. What else should he have said? People who usually complain that this government is always campaigning and not governing are now the ones saying that the communication is the biggest problem, not the policy.
What I think everybody wanted to hear was something that was pretty clear and a sense of all the countries, England, Wales, Scotland, pulling together. And we didn't get clarity.
I don't know what stay alert means. Presumably we all live our lives in normal times, staying alert to danger.
But communication is one thing. Content is another. Some want a much greater lifting of restrictions soon. But imagine the outcry if Boris Johnson was seen to take his lead from Donald Trump's tone in America.
This is going to go away without a vaccine. It's going to go away and we're not going to see it again.
Others, including Scotland's leader, Nicola Sturgeon, say the change in tone has come too fast. But what's her plan to get the economy functioning again and slowly lift lockdown? Walking the line between those who want no restrictions at all and those who want us to stay in our homes forever isn't easy. It's much more complex to explain plans to ease a lockdown than to impose one, but the public are ready to listen and can handle it.
Well, with me now is Neil Taylor, the founder of the Schwa Agency, which uses writers and behavioural scientists to help organisations with campaigns. He also came up with the name Ocado in a previous life for a big marketing company, and he's no stranger to politics either. So, Neil, has the government got this wrong?
So I think part of the problem, right, is that at the beginning they had a much easier job, right? So stay at home is a pretty simple message that you can obviously get across in 3 words. In fact, I think they did stay home and did it in 2 words. And of course, the team putting that stuff together have a bit of previous, right? They know how to do get Brexit done or take back control. So actually, I think they were doing a pretty good job of getting to the pithy version of something quite straightforward. Where they've hit a problem, clearly, is when the message itself gets much more nuanced. And I completely recognise the struggle of people saying, well, actually, we've now got this message of some people need to do this, some people need to do a slightly different thing. Most of you need to do basically what you were doing before, but a little bit differently. Oh, and could you get that into 2 words? And I have to say, I think stay alert, which is the bit that's been getting the criticism, is not a bad stab at much of that.
Does it need to be in 2 words, though? Could the public handle something that's a paragraph long, for example? Do people need more information at this time?
So I'm not sure that many people are going to sit down and read a paragraph. They are more likely to listen to him addressing the nation at 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. And I actually thought that, which was, 10, 12, 13 minutes worth of more detail around it, was pretty good and pretty clear to understand, actually. So now the government is getting this criticism of stuff not being clear. That feels a little bit unfair to me. I think often when people say something isn't clear, what they mean is, I don't agree with this, but unclear feels like an easier stick to beat them with because it just makes them seem incompetent.
In a way, has it kind of accidentally worked? Because people have seen this, they've gone, what does that mean? And people have been able to answer it for them. I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but, is that an effective campaign method?
Well, there's that famous line about all publicity is good publicity. I'm not sure in this situation that's what you're going for. And if you could have done the really simple, intuitive version of it, I'm sure they would have gone for it. I just think it's a harder message. It might force you to go, well, actually, I don't quite get this. Let me click on this link to find out a bit more about it, or let me watch Boris talking about it.
There's a long history of political campaigning. We kind of think of slogans as being a bit of a modern invention, but as you know, because we've spoken about it, we've talked about how Lord Kitchener said, your country needs you, and those kinds of really simple, effective messaging. How do people come up with those things? What are they thinking of when they do it?
I guess the simple answer is it is a lot of thinking, right? It's taking the stuff that I get fired at me by clients, and ministers probably get fired at them by civil servants, of here's all the stuff you have to say. And there is a process of kind of whittling, just working out which is the stuff that people absolutely need to know and which is the bit that people don't. And one of the things you have to accept is that is always going to be a bit of a compromise. There's going to be stuff that you would like to say in there that you just don't have room. And actually more important is the repetition and the hammering home of the really crucial stuff, and you let some of the other stuff fall by the wayside. And that means this stuff is always up for criticism, right? You can always find something that they could have been more specific about, or that they could have included, but you have to balance that against the message not getting through at all if it becomes too subtle. And if I look at, your country needs you, I think these days on Twitter, someone would be saying, well, that's very vague. Your country needs you for what? Can you tell me a bit more about it?
So if a campaign has immediate backlash, as often happens, as you've mentioned in these days of social media, what do you have to do next?
So I think there's a decision. You have to think to yourselves, are we basically right on this? Is there no better version? Even if this is a compromise, even this is as good as it gets, is there no better version? And if there's no better version, you keep hammering it home. You just go on and on about it. And eventually that stay alert bit, for instance, will start to mean all the stuff they want it to mean about remember to keep your distance and remember to keep washing your hands. If after some reflection you think we've got this wrong, then that's the time to switch tactic. But you better be damn sure that you've got something better to switch to. And I have been asking a few of the people who've been shouting at me, going, well, this is an awful bit of communication. I've been gently saying, well, what would you suggest instead? Till I hear a brilliant answer to that, I might get them to stick with it.
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.